one thing that I always find intriguing about people like you that have been in racing your whole life and been around it your whole life, what's the one memory that sticks out in your head that, not while you were driving, but just as you were growing up, like what's something that you look back and say, that was probably one of the coolest things I got to do as a kid? Where was it? What racetrack? What was the moment?
That's a great question.
We try to have different good questions, Chase. So
yeah, no,
we don't want the normal
the norm,
the normal BS race questions. So we try to have a little bit of fun.
Yeah, I respect it. As a kid, I would say the most special time I had growing up was, when Dad went over to Rays there in 2000, 2001, and 2, and I was just old enough to barely remember some of that, and I was just kind of old enough to, start realizing how cool this was, and obviously, the state that NASCAR was in at that point in time was high, and it was incredible, and I mean, my gosh, your dad was a part of this show that was just on another level, like it.
And he had retired. He had kind of semi-retired part-time, right?
He had.
Yeah.
Well, I guess.
Before the Dodge.
Yeah, I'm not exactly sure. Obviously they had their run in the late 80s, and then he branched off and tried to do his own deal.
Yeah.
There in like the mid 90s.
So this was kind of the comeback.
This was kind of the comeback, and I think there's a lot of things that went into that. One, I probably didn't realize it as much then, but looking back on it, it makes me appreciate it more. I could just tell the genuine joy he was getting out of running good again, because he hadn't been. I mean, he hadn't won a race in a long time. They ran terrible for a few years when he tried to do his own thing. I know he was stressed out, trying to run it and race on the weekends, as you know.
Oh yeah, it's a lot of work.
A lot of work, trying to manage people, etc. So I just felt like, looking back on it now, I see all this stuff, and I'm like, man, yeah, that was special. He was having the time of his life. He was winning races, competitive with a new team. He and Ray got along great. Mike Ford was his crew chief at the time, and things were rolling.
Yeah.
And so getting to go to Victory Lane and just be a part of those couple years, because that was kind of late in his career, and he was an older guy at that point in time that was winning races. It was kind of odd, I guess. So that was kind of when the younger crowd was coming in. You were coming in. Yeah. And it was just really fun. And I remember in particular, I remember going to Victory Lane with him at Pocono. I remember eating popcorn at the Pop Secret 400 at Rockingham at Victory Lane. And it was just, I think he beat Jimmy that day. And just thinking back on that stuff is so cool, you know, and realizing just how much fun he was having at that point in time, and then now knowing how hard it is to be competitive at this level, and for him to have gone through a period that was such a struggle to kind of come back and get back in the mix at an older age and mix it up with the young guys was pretty neat. Yeah,
you have a great relationship with your dad, and you guys have he's come through your whole path as far as bringing you up and being around the racetrack, going back to racing. You've been to Victory Lane with him. As you go through the injury, you go through the suspension, what was probably the best conversation that you remember, the best piece of advice and conversation that you guys had in this little streak of time? Because things change, things evolve, new problems happen, things move, things change all the time. So I mean, obviously those conversations are always different, but what's the conversation that you guys had that you're like, all right, I need to do this better, different, or I'm going to get through this with the injury and everything that happened through this 42 race streak?
Yeah, you have to kind of know my dad a little bit, but he's not the type of person that is gonna have those super one-line things that are gonna change your life, but he is someone who is just always in your corner, and I think that at the end of the day, he's a guy that you might not realize just how much he's paying attention or just how much he cares about what you have going on, or how much he knows you're struggling with not running well or whatever,
Yeah.
but he totally is paying attention to that stuff. And to me, he's the guy that keeps a really level ground of just approach on everything, and is just, you just know you have that support. But, I think back to the injury and he referenced, well, he tripped over a watering hose and, missed races when he was driving for Ray. And I was around for that. I remember that. And he told me after it happened, he's like, look, we've been out here skiing and stuff for a long time, and 20 years or so, and this is the first time you've got hurt, so I think you're doing pretty good. That's his
odds are in your favor.
Yeah, so that's kind of some of the way he looks at it. But it's he is a guy that also lets me figure out a lot on my own, and I appreciate that, because I think it's helped me grow over the course of my life. And because he's got so much experience, and he has opinions on a lot of things, but he does keep a lot of them to himself. And I think he lets me figure out stuff on my own, because I think he knows that at the end of the day, that's gonna help me more at the end of the story than anything.
The long haul.
Yep.
He knows that in the long haul, that's going to make it better. So you're in this position to where your dad's Bill Elliott. There's only two of you that I would put in this category, and that's you and Dale Jr. The importance of you winning a race this weekend may not seem as important to you as I view it. I view it as, when Dale would win, it lifted all tides. When you win, I view it as the same thing. And I've been around you enough to know that you want to be humble and do those things. Do you understand, the significance of when you have moments like this as to what it does for the whole sport?
Probably not. Probably not completely. I do understand a lot of it. I mean, I get it. I get.
I know you don't like to talk about it, but I mean, it's a big deal.
And I recognize that. I just, for me, I didn't want to start racing to, it wasn't a popularity contest for me.
Yeah.
I wanted to start racing and race because I wanted to be one of the best, from a competitive standpoint. And I've always tried to stick with that mentality and stick with just knowing that being me is the best way for myself to have happiness and just do my part, and continue to let the competitive aspect of racing drive me, because that's what's always driven me since I was a little kid. And I think if I ever lose sight of that, then I've got some bigger problems to address. And it's always been competition for me. It's always been the urge and the will to want to mix it up with people that I respect, and put myself in that category.
Well, you do a good job at it, and I think it's important for everybody to know how much effort and time and how much pressure is put on. I believe you and Dale Jr. are the only two people that have had as much pressure put on you in this sport, unwanted, because you want to go out and do exactly, you just want to be a competitor, and sometimes you just can't hide from that.
Hey, race fans, thanks for watching our video. For all NASCAR on Fox News, content, and the best clips from Fox Sports, be sure to follow and subscribe to our channel.